You're listening to the Doctor Is In podcast. This is the show where you get the best tips, tricks, and nutritional hacks to help you and your family get healthier. You'll also hear what works and what doesn't work so you don't have to waste your time and money. All right, let's get started.
Hello, I'm Dr. Martin Jr.
And I'm Dr. Martin Sr.
And this is the Doctor Is In podcast, and this is episode 115. And what we want to do today is answer your questions. Throughout the year, we're filming this episode here in December of 2017. It's going to air at the end of December. In fact, I think this might be the last podcast of 2017. And, throughout the year, we get a lot of questions. We encourage people to email us. One of the things that we, really our mission statement is to provide as much health information as possible, because we know that people then can make the right decisions, make the smart decisions, and take their health back. So we try to provide as much information as possible, and we get a lot of emails throughout the year.
Wow.
And we have awesome staff. We really do. We have awesome staff. Anybody who's emailed us knows how good our staff is, how quick they are. They do their best to answer fast. They come to us, ask the questions, right? I mean, it's awesome. So here is a list of questions that have been asked just over the last week. And we thought maybe this might be a good time to answer them on this episode. So today's just kind of a question and answers. So I'm going to ask some questions. You'll answer some questions. I'll answer some questions, and we'll go from there. So one of the questions that we get asked a lot in emails is pretty much this question here, which is how long until you start to notice a difference when you are taking supplements, right? We get that question asked a lot. Now, one of the things that you and I talk about a fair amount is, we formulate our own supplements, and we create a supplement to do a job for us.
Yeah.
Right? That may sound odd, but really when we create a supplement, it's to do a job for us. We see an area where, somebody needs help, so we create a formula that we use in our clinic to help that specific, so we get a lot of experience dealing with people, and so we create a lot of our own.
Yeah, well, if you look at, let's talk about something that we see in the office every day, more and more that I see it. It's incredible, and, maybe we'll get into this in one of our podcasts. We talk about anxiety or depression, right?
Yeah, we'll do one in the new year on that, because that's
it's very common now today. Like, it's taking over. Do you know that anxiety is actually taking over depression in terms of the amount of anxiety today, and even in young children? Like, depression is not rare by any stretch of the imagination, but anxiety is taking over. Although and I always say this again, they're two sides of a coin, because they come from the same source. Depression and anxiety come from the same source. They come from over a period of time, elevated levels of cortisol. It's a hormonal thing. Depression's hormonal. Anxiety is hormonal.
Well, and in the episode after, in the new year, we'll talk about even the effect that being constantly connected, social media, all those things.
Mm-hmm. It has an effect today. Eh?
Oh, absolutely. It has a dopamine effect, and, it's that reward center, and there's a lot of aspects. Poor nutrition. We'll talk about that. That's let's not go too far into that.
So the answer is, when the point I was trying
to
get
so somebody says this, if I'm taking a supplement, how long before I start to notice a difference? And I guess the answer to that question right off the top is, it's the famous, well, it depends.
Yeah, and, listen, because what is our motto in the clinic is that we don't guess, we test. So if we see that, for example, cortisol is high, and we give the patient cortisol control, usually, just on an average, you get patients, sometimes it's immediate. The first time they ever take a dosage of it, they feel better. But generally, I'll tell people, because they ask me, they're in the office, they actually see me, or they're talking to our staff once they've got their biomarker results. They want to know, like, okay, how long am I taking, and when am I going to see results? Well, generally pretty quickly.
Well, and that's the thing, because they'll notice, I mean, will it fix or reverse right away? No.
No.
However, they will notice areas of improvement, right? We always hear, for example, when you start to lower cortisol, you always start to hear they starting to sleep better. They don't feel as stressed. They got a little bit more energy. Those things happen. But there are a few things that we always kind of use to determine how long before somebody starts to see effect. As I mentioned, most things, if they take something that's good, they're going to start to notice a difference, pretty quickly with a lot of things that they take, right? And it depends what they're taking something for. If they're taking probiotics for a digestive issue, usually it works pretty quickly. They start to see some benefits to that. If they're taking something for preventative measures, they may not notice really anything. It just depends on why they're taking something. Yeah. But a lot of times, if they're taking something that's good and for a specific reason, they do notice improvements in how they're feeling. There's no question.
I'll use an example, too, of your mother, who the first time that we ever, the story of the clinic, one of the very major turning point in our clinic was when your mother took Navital pine bark extract for the first time. Like within 40, and I'll never forget. I mean, she literally woke me up on a Sunday morning to tell me, don't run. I don't know where you got this stuff, but don't run out of it because it's made a difference in my life. And I knew exactly what she was saying because, with chronic illnesses and, you know what I mean? Like, people know, right? It's like inflammation. If you got sore joints and, people live with that every day, and then we give them the inflammation formula and high DHA oil or whatever, and they go, you know what? Hey, that's better, right?
And especially if they combine it with dietary changes, right? We harp on this a lot, but those processed, crappy vegetable oils, crappy carbs, when they cut that stuff down or out, they cut out sugar, and they take the right supplement, generally the results are pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So that's one of those questions that's kind of difficult to answer because it varies so much. But we definitely expect to see some kind of movement towards getting better fairly quickly. Rarely will somebody say, I've been on this for a month and I don't notice a difference. Yeah. I mean, that's just because, again, we've, over the years, we've kind of improved and formulated our stuff that, generally we have, because we hired a product to do a job, we have high expectations for that job, right? We have high expectations for that product. There's no question. So that's, kind of a long way of answering that question. And then another question that somebody had was in relation to, they did a biomarker testing, and they wondering when should they follow up with it in terms of getting another one done. So before we get into that, there will be a lot of people listening that maybe don't know what we mean by biomarker testing. So let's just spend a few minutes talking about what we mean by that. And, I love the explanation that we talk about with people when it comes to the fact that a person does not go to bed tonight healthy and wake up tomorrow morning diseased. It doesn't work that way. You are not healthy today and diseased tomorrow. That's a good thing, right? I mean, can you imagine if you picked up a disease overnight, how bad that would be for us? It doesn't work that way. There is a definite process that occurs in between health and disease. So a person is healthy, some stuff starts to go on inside their body, and they head down the path towards disease, right? And the biomarker testing operates in between health and disease. Modern medicine really has become, in a lot of ways, just testing, right? If it doesn't show up in the testing, you don't have it, right? So, for example, you get tested, you're not diabetic, and then tomorrow you get tested, I'm diabetic, right? Because the testing says you're diabetic, right? Well, again, a person doesn't all of a sudden go to bed healthy today and wakes up a diabetic tomorrow. There's a lot that happens in between. The body, so biomarker testing is basically looking for the clues that the body is giving as you move from health towards disease, right? Yeah. So as you are moving towards disease, your body is giving you clues. And we call those clues check engine lights, right? It's like you're driving in your car and, that crazy check engine light comes on. And it can mean so many different things. I mean, in fact, they got to plug a little computer into the car. It spits out a code so that they know what's causing that check engine light. That's kind of like biomarker testing, right? Your check engine light goes on. So you always talk about the different check engine lights that you see in the office every day.
Yeah. If you were to take out, just put a body out front of me here, the anatomy, I would tell you that there's different areas and different things that will show up. Let's reverse, like you.
Well, like for example, like we talk about this a fair amount off air, but a tremendous check engine light. So if this comes on in your car, i.e., your body, low energy. Low energy is abnormal.
Never is normal.
The problem is people go visit their doctor a lot. At one point, it used to be the number one reason why people visit a doctor. I'm not sure if that's true anymore. I haven't seen anything on that. But go get tested by traditional medical testing for low energy. Nothing, unless you're really anemic, nothing ever comes back. Because you're not diseased. Their testing is designed to pick up diseases. So you're not diseased, you're low energy. So you go to your doctor, you get some blood tests done. I don't feel good. I feel lethargic. I'm tired. Blood tests come back. Your doctor says, well, you're fine. What he's saying is you don't have a disease. But that's frustrating. Yeah. So check engine light is low energy. Yeah. That's a check engine light. The nice thing is with biomarker testing, when you start to look at things like different nutrient deficiencies, I mean, there's so many things that you can find that can cause low energy. But another check engine light that's so common is sleeping. If you're not sleeping properly, that's a check engine light. There's something going on. Yeah. And that could be an indication that your body is moving away from health towards disease.
And what we'll see when we do the biomarkers is that if you're not sleeping, your cortisol levels are going up. Your inflammation markers are going up. Because when we did the podcast, we talked about reverse engineering, any kind of disease. When you looked at cancer and diabetes and cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer, the big ones. We talked about things that are really trending upwards in society. If we go backwards, you'll always see inflammation. But inflammation is not the cause.
No, it doesn't. And that's the thing, right? Inflammation doesn't
just
spontaneously show
markers,
up.
Right?
Yeah, what's causing the inflammation? Yeah. For some people, it's leaky gut.
Yeah.
For other people, it might be high cortisol. For other people, it might be high insulin. There are different causes.
Free radical damage.
So by figuring out that early on,
high circulating insulin.
That's right. And by figuring that out early on, you can fix the problem long before a disease sets in, right? So biomarkers are a great way to kind of see what's going on underneath the hood before a disease kicks in.
And we encourage people that are listening to us today, if you haven't had a biomarker done, even if you're feeling very good, it is a good thing to have done.
Yeah, it's just a kind of
testing. It's preventative, man. It is so good. It'll give you, if you're on the road and you're well down that road to good health, you're feeling good. Well, the biomarkers will just encourage you to, you're on the right diet for yourself. You're doing well. All your markers are good. But, we talked in other podcasts, and we talk about it all the time. How about vitamin D? Like, what's your status? What's your magnesium status?
Well, on that note, for now anyways, we're getting a completely redesigned website sometime early in the new year. But right now, and probably still while you're listening to this podcast, if you go to our main page, martinclinic.com, there's a big picture of your mug on the front of the website, but there's an invitation to watch a presentation that we did
on biomarkers
on the road from health to disease and the four distinct stages that goes on as you move towards disease, right? And so it's a very interesting online presentation that we did.
That's the Martin Clinic exclusive, right?
So you can go watch that. It gives you a lot of information on that. So that's.
And then they asked, wasn't a question.
Well, the question was how often should they do a follow up with a biomarker?
Yeah,
well,
we'll tell you about that.
If you're healthy, once a year is great. If you're not so healthy, you want to do it, every 6 months, every 3 months until you get a handle on.
Some people we're checking their levels every 3 months.
Yeah, so there's a different depending on what your goals are for getting that biomarker test done in the first place. Here's another question, and it relates to this time of year. It's dry skin and cold weather. Is there anything that they could do naturally to help with dry skin and cold weather?
Well, just think of it like your skin is just an organ. It's your biggest organ. It's the visible organ. You have dry skin. Oftentimes we're dehydrated. we're not thirsty at this time of the year. You know, you're not outside maybe as much, or people don't realize the importance of water. We talk about dehydration being a
Would you say that's probably the number one? And it's interesting because water consumption for the average person goes down in the wintertime because they're already cold to begin with.
Yeah.
So they're not really thirsty in a sense. They are thirsty, but they just don't feel thirsty. And they're definitely not going to be drinking a lot of cold water in the wintertime. So I would venture a guess that a big reason why you see more dry skin in the winter has to do with dehydration. Also, heat right in the house dries you out.
Yeah.
So naturally you would say drink more water, first of all.
Absolutely. I love oil. What you see on your skin will often be what's going on in the body. I love oil. I talk about the fish oil. Fish oil is so good for your skin. So is coconut oil. So is olive oil. These tremendous oils that your body needs lubrication. I love collagen because, again, it gives elasticity to
it's so
the
good
skin.
for the skin, right? So that's why
right? So many minerals and so much.
That's why we're big fans of bone broth protein,
Yeah.
because of the collagen content in there. So good for that. Now, what about, the thyroid? Does that play an aspect as well when it comes to dry skin?
Dry skin, absolutely. You look at women know this more than men. We don't clue in as well, but women know they know. I never argue a woman about their hair. I never argue about their skin or their nails, because women know these things. And if those things are dry and your hair is brittle or your hair is thinning out and your skin is really drying up, or even, itchy skin, these are often signs of a sluggish thyroid. That thyroid's not working up to snuff. So one of the ways of stimulate that thyroid, very, very good to get the, for good skin and better hair and, and
electrolytes also, right? I mean, people are dehydrated. We're scared of salt nowadays, right? We're scared of salt, and the salt that we do consume is processed salt, like, table salt. It's
highly processed.
Highly processed. It can dry your skin out, whereas some good Himalayan salt or different types of sea salts and those kind of things, as you mentioned, oils, so good for the skin. Probiotics as well, tremendous for the skin.
Yeah.
Those are a few things there. But so that's the dry skin and cold weather. I guess we have time for one more question, and this is one that we get a lot as well. How much protein and fat should you be consuming? So that really depends on the person, right? For example, I lift weights. You lift weights. So I would consume more protein than somebody who doesn't or is not looking to do the same things that we're looking to do. However, one thing we can say for sure is you're not getting enough protein.
Yeah, women especially.
Rarely does somebody fill out that, when we talk diet and we have to say, whoa, you got to cut down on that protein. You're just eating. That just doesn't happen, right? So how much protein should you be eating? Probably more than you already are. There are certain targets that you can kind of aim for to give you an idea, but rather than talking about a specific number, because that varies for the person by person, let's talk about, what we'd recommend at mealtime. So, if you want to stimulate muscle synthesis, if you want to enter into muscle building rather than breaking down muscle for those amino acids, most women at a meal has got to get more than 20 grams at a sitting. Men should get around 30 grams. Think about it. If you eat 3 meals a day and a guy, you're getting 30 grams at each meal, that's 90 grams. That's not a lot of protein.
No.
You're still low. You're still low. So you got to throw, right? I mean, you're still.
Now you want to be throwing in some protein powder and that.
Yeah, there's different ways, and we'll talk about that. And if you're a female and you're getting, 20 grams of protein 3 times a day, you're at 60. That's still low. That's not enough, right? You're just not getting enough. You're not getting enough protein. Now, we'll talk about, because another question that we get asked a lot, and we got asked it this week as well, is the type of protein. But before we answer that, let's talk about fat really quickly. How much fat should somebody be consuming? And this is a great question, because it is a definite misconception that we see, hear, read about. So if somebody's eating a low-carb diet, we wrote a cookbook and a book called Eat Fat, Get Lean. And, really the idea of that cookbook was, here are some recipes that don't shy away from fat. They're low carb. A lot of them are high protein, high carb, low carb, high fat, right? But how much fat you should consume really depends on what your goal is. And, well, what do we mean by that? Well, if you're trying to lose weight, then this is what we recommend for people, right? We recommend a lower carb, and that is a spectrum. It can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people, right? If you're a diabetic, or you're really insulin resistant, then we would recommend a very low carbohydrate diet. In fact, a ketogenic diet. But again, for a person that's used to eating 250, 300 grams of carbs a day, if they start eating 100 grams of carbs a day, that's a low carb diet, right? So we would recommend less carbs for sure. And here's the thing. When you have weight to lose, then you have stored energy in your fat cells, right? If you have fat cells are stored energy. So if you want to tap into those stored energy in your fat cells, if you want to start using that for energy to burn off your fat, then you don't want to eat too much fat. I mean, otherwise you're going to use that fat for energy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense.
You're consuming, you're not going to go after your stored one.
Which is why a lot of people are ketogenic. They're so low carb that they're burning fat for energy, but they're not losing any weight. Doesn't mean they're not getting health benefits. They're getting a lot of health benefits.
Yeah, they're burning rocket fuel, so it's good for you.
However, they may not be losing weight, and they get frustrated. Just because you go low carb and you're ketogenic does not mean that you're going to lose fat. It doesn't work that way. You can be burning fat for energy just by getting enough fat in your diet. So if you're eating a lot of fat, and this is a problem that we see, for example, we love, a lot of people like the bulletproof coffee. They like putting butter in their coffee, and it's good for you. However, if you're trying to lose weight, that's an empty fat in a sense that that's energy you're going to burn right then and there. You're not going to be tapping into your own fat cells.
Yeah, it's not getting your resources, right?
So you're ketogenic because you're not consuming any carbohydrates, but you're consuming enough fat that you never tap into your own fat cells for energy. So that's a problem. So how much fat should you consume? Well, it really depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to lose weight, then a lower carb, higher protein, moderate fat. It's still, we call it a high fat diet because you're still eating more fat than the average person does. But if you were to look at the kind of the macros, right, it would probably be between 100 and 120 grams of protein, 80 to 120 grams of fat, and, lower carb for most
Under
people.
50.
Yeah, if they're trying to be ketogenic. If they're not, it might vary a little bit.
Yeah,
but
some women are at 15 grams of carbs.
We mentioned this on a previous episode just a couple of podcasts ago, that the worst combination is carbs and fat. If you eat a lot of carbs and you eat a lot of fats, even if they're good fats, that's a bad combination. You're going to end up storing a ton of carbs as energy. You're just going to store. It's a terrible combination, right? One thing we can tell you for sure, and there's been a lot of studies on this, is it's very difficult to overfeed yourself on protein, right? The more protein you eat, you tend to eat less carbs and you tend to need less fat. In a sense, you take in less fat for energy, right? So that's what we would recommend.
Yep.
If you're listening to us and you're in your 50s and you're in your 60s, 70s, one thing we could tell you for sure that, and study after study has shown this, when you start to eat more protein, your muscles get better. They get stronger. They don't break down. You're less likely to get sarcopenia. So there's a lot of research that shows eat way more protein, right? So, which brings us to the next question that's kind of fits along with that. Somebody says, well, what's the best type of protein to consume? Well, let me say this right off the bat. First of all, the one that you can tolerate.
Yeah.
Because that's a big problem, is the ability to tolerate protein.
Yeah, and it's often the case with whey, right?
Yeah, a lot of people...
Whey is a great protein. The problem is
whey is really good for you if you can tolerate it.
A lot of people can't.
And it's easy to make whey taste good, right? I have whey protein envy because I can't tolerate it myself. Personally, I do not consume whey. I can't tolerate it. I get whey protein envy because they can make that thing taste so much better than a lot of the other things that are out there, right? So I consume collagen-based protein because I have I have a long history of digestive issues. My digestion's a lot better, but I do have a lot of different intolerances that I can consume some of, but if I overdo it, it gives me an issue.
Yeah.
Why
would you do it when you
exactly?
Don't have to?
I can handle collagen-based protein, so I like bone broth protein. I like hydrolate. I like collagen-based proteins. That's for me. I can handle a certain amount of pea protein, but I can't over consume pea protein as well. And pea protein is very good for you, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of it just depends on. Don't worry as much about the source of protein. I'm not talking about grain-based protein, obviously, but if you can eat your protein, that's the first thing. If you can get it in whole foods, awesome. That's the first thing we would recommend. If you can get enough meat, enough
eggs, meat, and cheese.
Yeah, if you can get enough of that, awesome. If you have to supplement, then you have to supplement with something you can tolerate. And if you're trying to fix something like leaky gut, or you got sore joints, then you may want to lean more towards a collagen, like a bone broth protein like we have, right? If you're looking to add a lot of muscle, then you may want a faster, more, you might want like a whey-based protein if you can tolerate it. Some people like plant-based proteins. Again, just, you want a good complete amino acid profile, which pea protein is. It is a good protein, right? Again, if you can tolerate it. So the idea, first of all, which protein is the best type to consume? The one that you can handle. Yeah. And if you can handle it and you eat a lot more protein and you add protein to, that's the best thing you can do in terms of eating protein, no question. That's what we would recommend when it comes to the amount of protein and the type of protein. Make sense? It makes sense, right? Yep. All right, well, we're out of time already. I actually have a lot more questions that people have asked us, and maybe we'll do another one on another question and answer one. We have a lot of fun answering questions. If you have more questions, you can email us at info@martinclinic.com. You can, if you're not a newsletter subscriber, head over to our website, martinclinic.com. Sign up for our free newsletters. We talk a lot of studies. We break them down. Our emails are short. They get to the point. They're very practical. So I'd encourage you to go over to our website and sign up for our newsletters. Again, we want to thank you for listening and have a great day.